What if the secret to extraordinary success isn't a giant leap, but a tiny step repeated daily? Most people wait for the perfect moment, the big breakthrough, or a life-changing opportunity. But real transformation rarely happens overnight. It's built quietly, in the small choices you make every single day. The 1% rule is a powerful philosophy. Improve just 1% each day, and over time you create exponential growth in your life. This book is your guide to mastering consistency, building powerful habits, and unlocking your full potential without overwhelm. You don't need more motivation, you need a better system. Through simple, practical insights, you'll learn how small actions compound into massive success. Your future doesn't depend on one big decision. It depends on what you do today and tomorrow and the day after that. Let's begin. Chapter 1: The Power of Small Wins. Why 1% matters more than 100%. There's a quiet truth most people overlook. Big changes don't come from big actions. They come from small ones, repeated daily, almost unnoticed, until one day everything is different. We've been conditioned to chase dramatic transformation. Lose 30 pounds in 30 days. Double your income overnight. Reinvent your life in a single, bold move. It sounds exciting, doesn't it? But deep down, you already know how that story usually ends, with burnout, frustration, and a quiet return to old habits. Here's the shift. Real success doesn't explode into your life, it compounds into it. Imagine improving just 1% each day. That sounds almost too small to matter. You won't feel it tomorrow. You might not even notice it next week. But over time, those tiny improvements stack, layer upon layer, until they create something extraordinary. On the flip side, a 1% decline each day doesn't seem dangerous either. Skip a workout. Delay a task. Make one small compromise. Harmless, right? But those small losses also compound. Left unchecked, they slowly pull you away from the life you want. That's the power of small wins. They don't just add up, they multiply. Think of your life like a direction, not a destination. Every small action you take is a vote for the person you're becoming. When you read a few pages instead of scrolling your phone, that's a vote for being disciplined. When you choose a healthy meal, that's a vote for being strong. When you show up, even when you don't feel like it, that's a vote for being consistent. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to keep voting in the right direction. The problem is, most people ignore small wins because they don't feel rewarding. There's no applause for waking up 10 minutes earlier. No trophy for sticking to your routine. No instant gratification for doing the right thing when it's hard. But here's what most people miss. The results you want are lagging indicators. They show up later, sometimes much later, than the actions that created them. Success is delayed, but so is failure. That's why consistency beats intensity every single time. Anyone can go all in for a day or a week. Motivation can carry you that far. But motivation is unreliable. It fades. It fluctuates. It disappears when life gets hard. Small wins don't rely on motivation. They rely on systems. A system is simply a repeatable action. Something so simple, so manageable, that you can do it even on your worst day. Because the goal isn't to go big, it's to never stop. Instead of asking, how can I change my life overnight, ask, what is the smallest action I can take today that moves me forward? Maybe it's writing one paragraph. Maybe it's doing 5 push-ups. Maybe it's saving $5. Maybe it's making one uncomfortable phone call. It might feel insignificant in the moment, but it's not. Because every time you follow through, you're building trust with yourself. You're proving that you are someone who does what they say they'll do. And that identity, that belief, is far more powerful than any single result. Here's another truth. Success isn't about doing more. It's about doing the right things consistently. You don't need a complete life overhaul. You need alignment. Tiny shifts that bring your daily actions closer to your long-term vision. Because the gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't as wide as it seems. It's just filled with small, repeated choices. Think about a plane leaving Los Angeles headed for New York. If you adjust its course by just a few degrees, it doesn't end up slightly off track. It lands in a completely different city. That's how powerful small changes are over time. Your life works the same way. A 1% shift in your habits today can completely change your destination. But here's the catch, you won't see it right away. At first, it feels like nothing is happening. You're putting in effort, but the results aren't visible. This is where most people quit. They assume it's not working. But what's really happening is something called the plateau of latent potential. Your efforts are building beneath the surface, quietly, invisibly, like roots growing underground before a tree ever breaks through the soil. If you quit during this phase, you never see the breakthrough. Small wins require patience. They require faith in the process. They require you to keep going, even when there's no immediate reward. But if you stay consistent, something incredible happens. The results start to show. Slowly at first, then all at once. That's the compounding effect in action. And once it starts, it's unstoppable. Momentum builds. Confidence grows. What once felt hard becomes automatic. You don't have to force yourself anymore. You become the kind of person who naturally does the things that lead to success. That's the real goal. Not just achieving success, but becoming someone who sustains it. Because big, sudden changes are fragile. They're easy to lose. But small, consistent improvements, those become part of who you are. So instead of chasing perfection, focus on progress. Instead of aiming for massive leaps, aim for tiny steps. Instead of waiting for motivation, build systems. And most importantly, start now. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. Because every day is a chance to move 1% forward or 1% backward. And over time, that makes all the difference. Ask yourself, what is one small win you can create today? Not something impressive. Not something extreme. Just something real. Something doable. Something you can repeat tomorrow. Then do it. And when tomorrow comes, do it again. That's how change happens. Quietly, gradually, powerfully, 1% at a time. Chapter 2. The Science of Compounding Growth in Everyday Life. There's a force quietly shaping your life right now, whether you notice it or not. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't make noise, but it's always working. It's called compounding. Most people hear that word and think about money, investments, interest, savings accounts. But compounding is much bigger than finance. It's a universal principle that applies to your habits, your mindset, your skills, your relationships, every part of your life. It's not just about what you do. It's about what your actions become over time. Compounding is simple at its core. Small actions, repeated consistently, create results that grow at an accelerating rate. Not linear. Not predictable. Exponential. And that changes everything. Because it means your efforts today are not just producing results for today. They're setting up a chain reaction for tomorrow, next month, and years from now. But here's where it gets interesting. Compounding doesn't feel powerful in the beginning. In fact, it feels slow. Almost pointless. You read a few pages of a book. Nothing changes. You practice a skill for 15 minutes. No visible improvement. You make one better choice. Your life looks the same. So your brain tells you, this isn't working. But your brain is wrong. Because compounding is not about immediate results. It's about accumulated impact. Think of it like planting seeds. You don't dig them up every day to check if they're growing. You trust the process. Beneath the surface, something is happening. Roots are forming. Strength is building. Structure is taking shape. Your daily actions work the same way. Every time you practice something, even imperfectly, you're strengthening neural pathways in your brain. You're literally rewiring yourself. What once felt unfamiliar becomes easier. What once required effort becomes automatic. This isn't motivation. It's biology. Your brain is designed to adapt. It responds to repetition. The more you do something, the more efficient your brain becomes at doing it. That's why small, repeated actions are so powerful. They don't just change your results, they change your brain. And once your brain changes, your behavior follows naturally. But compounding isn't just happening inside you. It's happening around you too. Your environment, your routines, your daily patterns, they all either accelerate or slow down your growth. For example, think about information. In today's world, you're constantly consuming something: videos, posts, conversations, ideas. Each piece might seem small, but over time, it shapes how you think. If you consistently feed your mind with negativity, doubt, and distraction, that compounds into confusion and low energy. But if you consistently expose yourself to learning, clarity, and purpose-driven ideas, that compounds into focus and confidence. What you consume becomes what you create. The same is true for your skills. Skill building is one of the clearest examples of compounding in action. At first, progress is invisible. You're awkward, slow, unsure. It feels like you're not improving at all. But something is happening. Each repetition is layering on top of the last. Tiny adjustments, small corrections, gradual refinement. Then one day, something clicks. You move faster, think clearer, perform better. It feels sudden, but it's not. It's the result of everything you've been building all along. That's how mastery works. Not through bursts of effort, but through steady accumulation. And here's something most people underestimate. Compounding rewards patience. We live in a culture that celebrates speed, fast results, quick wins, instant gratification. But compounding operates on a different timeline. It rewards those who are willing to keep going when results are invisible. It favors those who stay consistent when others get distracted. It multiplies the efforts of those who understand that time is part of the equation. This is why two people can start in the same place, with the same potential, and end up in completely different lives. One chooses small, consistent improvements. The other waits for big, dramatic changes. At first, there's no difference. But over time, the gap becomes massive. Not because one person worked harder, but because one person worked with compounding, and the other worked against it. Now, here's the powerful part. Compounding doesn't care whether your habits are good or bad. It amplifies both. If you procrastinate a little each day, that compounds into missed opportunities and stress. If you cut corners regularly, that compounds into weak foundations. If you ignore small problems, they grow into big ones. On the other hand, if you improve slightly each day, that compounds into excellence. If you stay consistent, that compounds into reliability. If you invest in yourself, that compounds into confidence and capability. Compounding is neutral. It simply magnifies whatever you feed into it. So the real question is, what are you compounding right now? Because your current results are not random. They are the outcome of repeated actions, stacked over time. And the future you is being built the same way. The good news? You don't need to overhaul your life to change your trajectory. You just need to shift what you repeat. Choose one area, one habit, one behavior. Then commit to showing up for it again and again. Not perfectly, not intensely, just consistently. Because every repetition is an investment. Every action is a deposit. Every day is adding something to your future, whether you realize it or not. And over time, those deposits grow. They build momentum. They create opportunities. They open doors you couldn't see before. That's the science of compounding growth. It's not flashy. It's not loud. But it's incredibly powerful. And once you understand it, you start to see life differently. You stop chasing quick results. You stop underestimating small actions. You stop quitting too early. Instead, you focus on the process. You trust the accumulation. You respect the timeline. Because you know something others don't. That the smallest actions repeated daily are shaping a future far bigger than they appear. So start today. Not with something overwhelming, but with something repeatable. Something sustainable. Something that, over time, can grow. Then protect it. Repeat it. Build on it. And let compounding do what it does best. Turn the ordinary into something extraordinary. Chapter 3. Breaking the myth of overnight success. We love a good success story. Someone starts with nothing, then suddenly everything changes. They go viral. They make millions. They blow up overnight. It's fast. It's dramatic. It's inspiring. And it's also misleading. Because what looks like an overnight success is almost never overnight. What you're seeing is the highlight, the moment the world finally notices. What you're not seeing is the long stretch of time before that moment. The quiet work, the failures, the repetition, the doubt, the days when nothing seemed to move forward. The truth is simple. Success is usually slow until it isn't. But most people quit before they ever reach that turning point. We've been trained to believe that big results should happen quickly. And when they don't, we assume something is wrong. We question ourselves. We lose confidence. We change direction. Or worse, we stop altogether. Not because we lack ability, but because we misunderstand the timeline. Every meaningful success story has a hidden phase, a period where effort and results don't seem to match. An artist creates for years with no recognition. An entrepreneur builds with little traction. A writer produces content that no one reads. A person works on themselves but sees no visible change. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. But that's not true. What's happening is preparation. Skills are being sharpened. Resilience is being built. Identity is being shaped. Standards are rising. Mistakes are teaching lessons that can't be learned any other way. This phase is invisible, but it's essential. Without it, the overnight success wouldn't be able to handle success at all. Imagine giving massive success to someone who hasn't built the habits, discipline, or mindset to sustain it. It wouldn't last. It would collapse under pressure. That's why the process takes time. It's not just about getting results. It's about becoming the kind of person who can keep them. But here's where most people go wrong. They compare their behind the scenes to someone else's highlight moment. You see someone winning, achieving, growing fast, and you feel like you're falling behind. What you don't see is their years of obscurity. You don't see the failed attempts, the long nights, the rejections, the moments they almost gave up. You're comparing your beginning to their breakthrough. And that comparison is unfair. Success doesn't happen on a shared clock. Everyone's timeline is different. Everyone's path is different. And most importantly, everyone's starting point is different. The danger of believing in overnight success is that it creates unrealistic expectations. It makes you think you should be further along than you are. It makes you rush the process. It makes you abandon things that are actually working just because they're not working fast enough. But speed is not the goal. Durability is. Fast success is fragile. It's often built on luck, timing, or temporary trends. And what comes fast can disappear just as quickly. But success that is built gradually, step by step, is strong. It has depth. It has structure. It lasts. Because it's supported by experience, not just outcome. Here's another truth most people don't talk about. Success often looks boring in real life. It's not always exciting. It's not always motivating. It's not always fun. It's showing up when you don't feel like it. It's doing the same thing again and again. It's improving in ways no one notices. It's staying focused when distractions are everywhere. There's no spotlight in that face. But that's where real progress lives. The problem is, we've been conditioned to chase excitement instead of commitment. We want the rush of a big win, but not the repetition that creates it. We want recognition, but not the quiet work that earns it. We want results, but not the responsibility that comes with them. So we jump from one thing to another, looking for something that takes off. But the truth is, most things only take off after you've stayed with them long enough. Consistency doesn't feel glamorous, but it creates momentum. And momentum is what eventually makes things look sudden. When people say, "It happened so fast," what they really mean is, "I didn't see the build-up." Because growth doesn't announce itself while it's happening. It reveals itself later. Think about a breakthrough moment in any area of life, a career opportunity, a personal transformation, a major achievement. From the outside, it looks like a single event. But that moment is actually the result of hundreds, sometimes thousands of small actions that came before it. Each one played a role. Each one mattered. Even the ones that seemed like failures. Especially those. Because failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of the process that leads to it. Every mistake teaches you something. Every setback forces you to adapt. Every challenge strengthens your ability to keep going. And over time, those lessons stack. They prepare you for the moment when opportunity finally meets readiness. That's when everything changes. Not because it's sudden, but because you're finally ready to receive what you've been building toward. So instead of chasing the idea of overnight success, focus on long-term alignment. Ask yourself, am I building something that can last? Am I improving in ways that matter? Am I becoming better, even if no one sees it yet? Because the real win is not going viral. It's not instant recognition. It's not quick results. The real win is becoming consistent, capable, and committed, no matter how long it takes. That's what separates those who succeed from those who stop. Not talent, not luck, not timing, but the willingness to keep going when progress feels slow. So let go of the myth. Stop expecting your life to change overnight. Start respecting the process that creates real change. Understand that your efforts are not wasted just because they're not visible yet. They are building something. Something strong. Something real. Something that one day will look like it happened all at once. But you'll know the truth. It didn't happen overnight. It happened one day at a time. Chapter 4. Identity First. Becoming the person you want to be. Most people try to change their lives from the outside in. They focus on goals, outcomes, results. I want to lose weight. I want to make more money. I want to be successful. There's nothing wrong with these desires, but there's a problem with the approach. When you focus only on outcomes, you're chasing something external, something you don't fully control. And when results don't come fast enough, your motivation drops. Your confidence shakes. And eventually, your effort fades. That's why so many people start strong and then slowly fall back into old patterns, because they're trying to change what they have without changing who they are. Real transformation works the opposite way. It starts from the inside out. It starts with identity. Identity is the story you tell yourself about yourself. It's the quiet belief that says, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I don't do. And whether you realize it or not, your identity is driving your behavior every single day. If you see yourself as someone who isn't disciplined, you'll struggle to stay consistent. If you believe you're not a morning person, you'll keep hitting snooze. If you think you're bad with money, you'll continue making the same financial mistakes. Not because you can't change, but because your actions are trying to stay aligned with your identity. Here's the truth. People don't resist change. They resist being someone different. So if you want lasting change, you don't start with goals. You start with identity. Instead of asking, what do I want to achieve? Ask, who do I want to become? Do you want to become someone who is focused, reliable, healthy, confident, calm under pressure, financially responsible? Get clear on that. Because once you define the person, the actions become obvious. A healthy person moves their body regularly. A focused person limits distractions. A confident person keeps promises to themselves. A disciplined person follows through, even when it's uncomfortable. You don't need to guess what to do. You just need to act in alignment with the identity you've chosen. But here's where it gets powerful. You don't become that person all at once. You become them through proof. Every action you take is a piece of evidence. When you act in alignment with your desired identity, even in a small way, you reinforce it. You're telling yourself, this is who I am now, and your brain listens. At first, it might feel unnatural, even uncomfortable. You might think, this isn't really me. That's normal. Because your current identity has been built over years of repeated thoughts and behaviors. It has momentum. It feels familiar, even if it's limiting. But identity is not fixed. It's flexible. It's shaped by what you do repeatedly. So every time you show up differently, you weaken the old identity and strengthen the new one. Let's say you want to become a writer. You don't wait until you feel like a writer. You write, even if it's messy, even if it's short, even if no one reads it. Because every time you sit down and write, you're casting a vote for that identity. I am someone who writes. And over time, that identity becomes real, not because you declared it, but because you proved it. The same applies to any area of your life. Want to become more confident? Start doing things a confident person would do. Speak up. Make decisions. Take action without overthinking. Not perfectly, but consistently. Confidence isn't something you wait for. It's something you build. And it's built through action, not intention. Here's another key shift. Stop focusing on what you need to achieve to feel successful. Start focusing on what kind of person would naturally achieve those things. Because outcomes are temporary. Identity is lasting. If you only chase results, you might reach them and then lose them. But if you become the kind of person who creates those results, you can produce them again and again. That's the difference between short-term change and long-term transformation. Now, let's talk about integrity. One of the fastest ways to shape your identity is to keep promises to yourself. Not big, dramatic promises. Small ones. I'll wake up when my alarm goes off. I'll finish what I started. I'll follow through on this task. Every time you keep a promise, you strengthen your self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of a powerful identity. Because when you trust yourself, you stop negotiating with yourself. You don't rely on motivation. You don't wait for the perfect moment. You act because that's who you are. On the other hand, every time you break a promise, you weaken that trust. You send a message, my words don't matter. And over time, that becomes your identity. So choose your promises carefully and honor them, even when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's inconvenient. Because that's where identity is forged. Another important piece, your environment should support your identity. If you're trying to become focused but surround yourself with constant distraction, you're working against yourself. If you're trying to become healthy but keep unhealthy options within easy reach, you're creating friction. Make it easier to be the person you want to become. Design your surroundings to reflect your identity. Because when your environment and your identity align, your actions follow naturally. And finally, be patient with yourself. Identity change is not instant. It's a gradual shift, a quiet evolution. There will be days when you fall back into old patterns, moments when you doubt yourself, times when progress feels slow. That doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're in the process. The key is not perfection. It's persistence. Keep showing up as the person you want to become, even when it feels unfamiliar. Because over time, it won't feel unfamiliar anymore. It will feel natural. It will feel like you. And one day, you'll look back and realize something powerful. You didn't just change your habits. You changed who you are. And once that happens, everything else begins to change with you. Chapter 5, The Habit Loop, How Tiny Actions Shape Big Results. Your life is not built by the big moments you remember. It's built by the small actions you repeat. Day after day, without thinking, almost automatically. These actions are called habits, and they are running more of your life than you realize. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, much of what you do isn't a conscious decision. It's a pattern, a routine, a loop your brain has learned to follow. And once you understand how that loop works, you gain something powerful: control. Because habits are not random. They follow a predictable structure, a cycle your brain uses to save energy and simplify life. This cycle is called the habit loop. It has 3 parts: a cue, a behavior, and a reward. First, the cue. This is the trigger, the signal that tells your brain it's time to act. It could be a time of day, a location, an emotion, a situation, even another person. You wake up, that's a cue. You feel stressed, that's a cue. You sit on the couch, that's a cue. Your brain is constantly scanning for these triggers. Then comes the behavior. This is the action you take in response to the cue. You grab your phone. You open the fridge. You start working. You procrastinate. The behavior can be good or bad, but it's always tied to the cue. Finally, the reward. This is the payoff. The reason your brain remembers the loop and wants to repeat it. Maybe it's a feeling of relief, a hit of pleasure, a sense of accomplishment, a moment of distraction. The reward closes the loop. It tells your brain, this worked. Do it again. And just like that, a habit is formed. Cue, behavior, reward. Over time, this loop becomes stronger, faster, more automatic, until eventually you don't even notice it happening. That's the power and the danger of habits. Because once a loop is established, it runs on autopilot. You don't think about it. You don't question it. You just follow it. This is why breaking bad habits feels so hard. It's not just about stopping a behavior. It's about interrupting a loop your brain has been running for years. And your brain doesn't like that. It prefers familiarity, efficiency, patterns it already knows. So when you try to change a habit, you feel resistance. Not because you're weak, but because your brain is doing its job. But here's the good news. You don't need to fight your habits. You can redesign them. Instead of trying to eliminate a habit completely, you can keep the same cue and reward and change the behavior in between. Let's say you feel stressed cue, and your habit is to scroll your phone behavior to feel better reward. The goal isn't to remove the stress or the need for relief. It's to swap the behavior. Maybe instead of scrolling, you take a short walk, or you breathe deeply for a minute, or you write down what's bothering you. Same cue, similar reward, different action. Over time, the new behavior becomes the default. That's how you reshape habits without fighting your brain. Now let's talk about awareness. Most habits stay in place because they're invisible. You don't notice the cue. You don't question the behavior. You don't think about the reward. You just go through the motions. So the first step to change is simple. Notice the loop. Start paying attention to your patterns. When you feel the urge to check your phone, what triggers you to snack? When do you avoid doing something important? Don't judge it. Just observe it. Because you can't change what you don't see. Once you become aware, you create space. And in that space, you can choose differently. Here's another powerful idea. Make your good habits obvious and your bad habits invisible. If you want to build a new habit, don't rely on memory or willpower. Use cues. Place your workout clothes where you can see them. Keep a book on your pillow. Set a reminder at the same time every day. Make the trigger clear. At the same time, reduce exposure to cues that lead to unwanted habits. If your phone distracts you, keep it in another room. If junk food is a problem, don't keep it within reach. You're not removing temptation, you're reducing friction. And that makes change easier. Because habits thrive on convenience. The easier something is, the more likely you are to do it. So flip the equation. Make good habits easy. Make bad habits harder. Even small changes in effort can have a big impact over time. Now let's talk about rewards. Your brain needs a reason to repeat a behavior. If a habit doesn't feel rewarding, it won't stick. That's why many people struggle to build good habits. The benefits are delayed. You don't see immediate results from exercising. You don't feel instantly smarter from reading. You don't notice quick returns from saving money. So your brain loses interest. But here's the key. You can create immediate rewards. After completing a habit, give yourself a small sense of satisfaction. Track your progress. Check off a list. Acknowledge the effort. Even something as simple as saying, "I did it," can reinforce the behavior. Because your brain starts associating the habit with a positive feeling. And that keeps the loop alive. Finally, understand this. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems, and your habits are the foundation of those systems. If your habits are strong, your results will follow. If your habits are weak, your results will struggle, no matter how big your goals are. So don't focus on changing your entire life overnight. Focus on mastering the loop. One cue, one behavior, one reward. Refine it, repeat it, strengthen it. Because every habit you build is shaping your future. Quietly, consistently, powerfully. And over time, those tiny actions don't just create results. They create a life you don't have to force anymore. A life that runs on habits you've designed. A life where success is not something you chase, but something you live every single day. Chapter 6. Consistency over perfection, the real success formula. Perfection looks powerful. It's clean, flawless, impressive. It promises a result without mistakes, without failure, without judgment. And for that reason, a lot of people chase it. They wait for the perfect time. the perfect plan, the perfect conditions. But here's the truth most people learn too late. Perfection doesn't move your life forward. Consistency does. Perfection is about getting everything right. Consistency is about showing up no matter what. And in the long run, showing up imperfectly will always beat waiting perfectly. Think about how many times you've delayed something because it wasn't ready. You didn't start the project because the idea wasn't fully formed. You didn't go to the gym because you couldn't do a full workout. You didn't take action because you didn't feel confident enough. It feels responsible in the moment. Logical even. But what's really happening? You're stalling progress in the name of perfection. Perfection creates pressure. It tells you that every action has to be your best, that every effort has to be complete, that every result has to meet a high standard before it even begins. And that pressure leads to hesitation. Because if it has to be perfect, it has to be safe. If it has to be safe, it has to be controlled. And if it has to be controlled, it often never happens. Consistency works differently. Consistency removes the pressure to be perfect. It replaces it with a simple expectation. Just show up. Even if it's messy. Even if it's small. Even if it's not your best. Because progress doesn't require perfection, it requires repetition. Every time you show up, you create movement. Every time you take action, you reduce resistance. Every time you repeat a behavior, you strengthen it. That's how real growth happens. Not in perfect moments, but in repeated ones. Here's something most people don't realize. Perfection is often just fear in disguise. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of not being good enough. So instead of taking action and risking imperfection, we wait. We prepare. We overthink. We delay. And we tell ourselves, I'll start when it's better. But better never comes without starting. Consistency breaks that cycle. It says, start now and improve as you go. It allows you to take imperfect action without overthinking the outcome. And once you start, something shifts. You learn. You adjust. You get feedback. And slowly, your imperfect actions become stronger, sharper, and more effective. Not because you plan perfectly, but because you practice consistently. This is where momentum begins. Momentum doesn't come from one perfect effort. It comes from repeated action. When you show up daily, even in small ways, you create a rhythm. And that rhythm carries you forward. It reduces the mental effort required to begin. It makes action feel normal instead of forced. And once something feels normal, it becomes sustainable. That's the key. Perfection is exhausting. Consistency is sustainable. You can't be perfect every day, but you can show up every day, even if it's just a little, even if it's just enough. And enough, repeated daily, becomes more than enough over time. Now let's talk about missed days, because this is where many people lose momentum. They miss one day, and suddenly it feels like failure. They think, I broke the streak. I'm messed up. What's the point now? So they stop. Not because they can't continue, but because they believe they've already failed. But consistency is not about never missing. It's about never quitting. Missing once is a mistake. Missing twice is the beginning of a new pattern. So the goal isn't to be perfect. It's to return quickly. If you miss a workout, show up the next day. If you skip a task, get back on track immediately. Don't let one missed action turn into a habit of stopping. Because the power of consistency is not in never falling. It's in always getting back up. Another important shift. Stop measuring your success by how perfect your actions are. Start measuring it by how often you show up. Did you take action today? That's the win. Not how long. Not how perfect. Not how impressive. Just that you showed up. Because every time you show up, you reinforce a powerful message. I am someone who follows through. And that identity builds strength over time. Here's something else to understand. Consistency compounds in ways perfection never can. Perfection is isolated. It's a single moment of high performance. Consistency connects moments. It turns small actions into long-term patterns. It builds reliability. And reliability is what produces results you can count on. Think about trust. You don't trust someone because they were perfect once. You trust them because they show up again and again. The same applies to yourself. You build self-trust through consistency, through repeated proof that you will act, even when it's inconvenient. And once you trust yourself, everything changes. You stop doubting. You stop hesitating. You stop waiting. You act because that's what you do. That's who you are. And that's the real success formula. Not perfection, not intensity, but consistency. So here's the shift. Lower the bar, but raise the frequency. Make your actions so simple that you can't avoid them. Focus on showing up, not showing off. Allow yourself to be imperfect, but refuse to be inactive. Because in the end, the people who win are not the ones who did things perfectly. They're the ones who did things repeatedly. They kept going. They stayed in motion. They showed up long after others stopped. So stop waiting to be perfect. Start choosing to be consistent. Because your future is not built on flawless moments. It's built on the days you showed up when it wasn't easy. The days you did the work when no one was watching. The days you chose progress over perfection. And those days, they add up. They shape you. They define you. And eventually, they lead you exactly where you want to go. Chapter 7, Mastering Your Morning. Win the first hour, win the day. How you start your morning is how you train your mind to live your life. Before the noise, before the notifications, before the demands of the world begin pulling at your attention, there is a small window of time that belongs only to you. That window is powerful. Because in that first hour, you are not reacting, you are deciding. Most people don't realize it, but their day is often lost before it even begins. They wake up and immediately check their phone. They scroll. They read messages. They absorb other people's priorities. And without noticing, they shift from being in control to being controlled. Their mood becomes reactive. Their focus becomes scattered. Their energy gets pulled in different directions, all before they've even fully woken up. That's not a strong start, that's a surrender. Mastering your morning is about taking that control back. It's about creating a deliberate beginning instead of drifting into the day. Because when you win the first hour, you set a tone that carries into everything that follows. Clarity replaces confusion. Focus replaces distraction. Calm replaces chaos. And that changes how you show up, not just in the morning, but all day long. Here's the key idea. Your morning doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be intentional. This is not about building a long, complicated routine that feels overwhelming. It's about designing a simple structure that puts you in the right state, mentally, physically, and emotionally. Because your state determines your performance. If you start your day rushed, distracted, and reactive, you'll carry that energy forward. But if you start your day grounded, focused, and clear, you create an advantage most people never experience. So what does a powerful morning actually look like? It starts with one decision. Don't reach for your phone. That single action protects your mind. When you wake up, your brain is highly impressionable. It's absorbing information quickly, setting patterns for the day. If the first thing you feed it is noise, social media, emails, headlines, you're allowing outside input to shape your internal state. Instead, create space, even just a few minutes. Let your mind wake up without interference. This alone can change everything. Next, move your body. Not a full workout, just movement. Stretch, walk, do a few simple exercises. This isn't about fitness, it's about activation. Movement wakes up your system. It increases energy. It sends a signal the day has begun. And when your body wakes up, your mind follows. Then bring your attention inward. This can be through silence, breathing, or reflection. You don't need anything complicated. Just pause. Notice your thoughts. Notice your breathing. Notice how you feel. This moment of awareness centers you. It slows down the mental noise before it starts speeding up. It gives you control over your focus. Now set direction. Before the day starts pulling you in different directions, decide what matters. Ask yourself, What are the most important things I need to focus on today? Not 10 things. Not everything. Just a few. This creates clarity. Because without direction, your day becomes reactive. You respond to whatever shows up instead of moving toward what matters. But when you define your focus early, you move with purpose. You know where your energy should go. And that makes your actions more effective. Another powerful element of the morning is input. What you consume shapes how you think. So instead of random content, choose something intentional. Read something that sharpens your thinking. Listen to something that builds your mindset. Expose yourself to ideas that move you forward. Even 5 to 10 minutes can make a difference. Because you're not just waking up your body, you're aligning your mind. Now here's something important. Your morning routine doesn't need to be long. It needs to be consistent. Even 20 to 30 minutes of intentional action can create a massive shift. Because it's not about the length, it's about the quality. And the repetition. When you start your day the same way, on your terms, you create stability. You reduce decision fatigue. You remove randomness. You build a rhythm your mind begins to rely on. And that rhythm becomes your foundation. But let's be real, there will be days when things don't go as planned. You wake up late. You feel tired. Your schedule is packed. That's life. And on those days, the goal is not to do everything. It's to do something. Even if it's just 2 minutes of stillness. Even if it's just one clear intention. Even if it's just choosing not to check your phone immediately. Small actions still count. Because they protect the pattern. They remind you, I'm still in control of how I start. And that mindset matters more than perfection. Here's another truth. Your morning is not just about productivity. It's about identity. It's a daily statement of who you are. When you wake up with intention, you're saying, I take ownership of my life. When you create space before reacting, you're saying, I control my focus. When you choose clarity over chaos, you're saying, I move with purpose. And those statements shape how you see yourself. Over time, they become part of your identity. You become someone who leads their day, instead of being led by it. And that identity carries into everything. Your work improves. Your decisions sharpen. Your stress decreases. Your confidence grows. Not because your life became easier, but because you became more prepared. That's the real power of the morning. It doesn't guarantee a perfect day, but it gives you a strong start. And a strong start gives you an edge. Because most people don't prepare themselves before the day begins. They jump straight into reaction mode. So when you take even a small amount of time to center yourself, you separate yourself. You create space between stimulus and response. You think before you act. You choose instead of react. And that changes your results. So here's your challenge. Don't try to build the perfect morning. Build your morning. Something simple. Something intentional. Something repeatable. Protect the first hour, even if it's not a full hour. Because that time is yours. And how you use it will shape everything that follows. Win the first hour. And you give yourself the best possible chance to win the day. Chapter 8. The Environment Advantage. Design your space for success. You don't rise or fall based on willpower alone. You rise or fall based on what surrounds you. Your environment, your physical space, your digital space, and even the people around you is quietly shaping your decisions every single day. Not in obvious ways, not in dramatic ways, but in subtle, powerful nudges. A cluttered desk makes it harder to focus. A loud space makes it harder to think. An organized room makes it easier to act. A calm environment makes it easier to stay in control. You may think you're making independent choices, but often your environment is making them for you. That's the hidden advantage most people overlook. They try to change their behavior without changing their surroundings. They rely on discipline while staying in spaces that constantly work against them. And that creates friction. Because every action becomes harder than it needs to be. Here's the shift. Stop trying to force better choices. Start designing better environments. Because when your environment is aligned with your goals, the right actions feel natural, and the wrong ones feel inconvenient. That's the advantage. Let's start with your physical space. Look around you right now. What does your environment encourage? Does it push you toward focus or distraction? Does it support your goals or compete with them? Most people don't realize how much visual input affects their behavior. Every object in your space sends a signal. A messy room signals delay. An organized space signals clarity. A visible tool signals action. A hidden one signals neglect. If you want to improve your daily actions, begin by making the right ones obvious. If you want to read more, keep a book within reach. If you want to work more effectively, keep your workspace clean and ready. If you want to stay hydrated, keep water visible. These are small shifts, but they change behavior without effort. Because you're not relying on memory or motivation. You're relying on design. Now let's talk about friction. Friction is the effort required to do something. And here's the truth. Even a small amount of friction can stop you. If something feels slightly inconvenient, your brain will look for an easier option. That's not weakness, that's efficiency. Your brain is always trying to conserve energy. So your job is simple. Reduce friction for the actions you want. Increase friction for the actions you don't. If you want to focus, remove distractions from your immediate space. Silence notifications. Close unnecessary tabs. Keep your phone out of reach. Make it harder to get pulled away. At the same time, make it easier to get started. Prepare your workspace ahead of time. Lay out what you need before you begin. Remove anything that slows you down. Because the easier it is to start, the more likely you are to follow through. And once you start, momentum takes over. Now consider your digital environment. This is one of the most underestimated influences in modern life. Your phone, your apps, your feeds, they are designed to capture your attention. And they do it well. Every notification is a cue. Every scroll is a loop. Every click is a choice being shaped for you. If you don't control your digital space, it will control your time. So design it intentionally. Unfollow what distracts you. Mute what drains you. Organize your apps so that what matters is easy to access, and what doesn't is out of sight. Even something as simple as moving certain apps off your home screen can reduce unnecessary use. Because again, it's about friction. Make distraction harder. Make focus easier. Now let's talk about people. Your social environment is just as powerful as your physical one. The people you spend time with influence your mindset, your standards, and your behavior. Not through pressure, but through exposure. You begin to think like the people around you. Act like them. Normalize what they normalize. If you're surrounded by negativity, it becomes familiar. If you're surrounded by ambition, it becomes expected. So ask yourself, who am I around the most? And what do they reinforce? This doesn't mean you need to cut people off or isolate yourself. It means you need awareness. And when possible, you need alignment. Spend more time with people who support your growth. People who challenge you. People who reflect the direction you want to move in. Because environment is not just where you are, it's who you're with. And both matter. Here's another important idea. Your environment should reduce decision-making. Every decision you make throughout the day uses mental energy. And the more decisions you have to make, the more tired your mind becomes. That's called decision fatigue. It leads to poor choices, distraction, delay. But when your environment is structured, many decisions are already made. You don't have to think about what to do next. You just follow the setup. Your workspace is ready. Your tools are in place. Your path is clear. This frees up your energy for what actually matters, doing the work. Now here's the deeper truth. Your environment doesn't just shape your actions. It shapes your identity. When you step into a space designed for focus, you feel more focused. When you enter a space built for calm, you feel more calm. When your surroundings reflect discipline, you begin to act with discipline. Your space becomes a mirror. And over time, you begin to match it. That's why design matters. Not for appearance, but for alignment. Because the goal is not to fight your environment. It's to make your environment work for you. So instead of asking, how can I be more disciplined? Ask, how can I make this easier to do? How can I make the right action the default? How can I remove what gets in the way? Small adjustments, strategic changes, intentional design. These are the tools. Because success is not just built by what you do. It's built by where you do it. And when your environment supports your direction, everything becomes smoother, clearer, more natural. So take control of your space. Shape it. Simplify it. Align it with who you want to become. Because when your environment is working with you, not against you, you don't just act differently. You live differently. And that changes everything. Chapter 9. Eliminating friction. Make good habits effortless. Success is not just about what you do. It's about how easy it is for you to do it. Most people assume that achieving their goals requires more discipline, more effort, more willpower. So they try to push harder, force themselves, stay strict. But that approach rarely lasts, because the harder something feels, the less likely you are to keep doing it. This is where friction comes in. Friction is any resistance, mental, physical, or emotional, that makes an action harder to start or continue. And here's the truth. Your life is shaped not by what's important, but by what's easy. If something is easy, you'll do it more often. If something is hard, you'll avoid it, even if it matters. That's not laziness. That's human nature. Your brain is wired to conserve energy. It constantly looks for the path of least resistance, the simplest option, the fastest reward. So instead of fighting that instinct, you can use it. You can design your life so that the right actions are the easiest ones to take. That's how you eliminate friction. Let's start with the biggest barrier, starting. Most habits don't fail because they're too hard to complete. They fail because they're too hard to begin. Think about it. You don't skip a workout because you can't finish it. You skip it because getting started feels like too much. You don't avoid reading because it's impossible. You avoid it because opening the book feels like effort. The start is the hardest part. So the solution is simple. Make starting effortless. Shrink the action. Instead of saying, I'll work out for an hour, say, I'll do one exercise. Instead of, I'll write a chapter, say, I'll write one sentence. Instead of, I'll study for 2 hours, say, I'll review one page. It sounds small, almost too small. But that's the point. Because once you start, something shifts. The resistance fades. The effort feels lighter. Momentum begins. And most of the time, you'll end up doing more than you planned. But even if you don't, you still showed up. And showing up consistently is what builds the habit. Now let's talk about preparation. One of the easiest ways to eliminate friction is to decide in advance. Don't wait until the moment to figure things out. Prepare before the action is needed. If you want to eat better, decide your meals ahead of time. If you want to work consistently, plan your tasks the night before. If you want to move your body, set out your clothes in advance. When the moment arrives, there's no thinking required. No hesitation. No decision-making. No delay. You just follow the plan. Because clarity removes resistance. Another powerful strategy is to reduce the number of steps between you and the action. Every extra step creates friction. If your tools are scattered, you'll hesitate. If your setup takes time, you'll delay. If access is complicated, you'll avoid it. So simplify everything. Keep what you need within reach. Organize your space for quick action. Remove unnecessary steps. Make it as smooth as possible. Because the fewer barriers there are, the more likely you are to act. Now here's something most people don't realize. Time friction matters just as much as effort friction. If something feels like it takes too long, you'll postpone it, even if it doesn't actually take much time. So redefine your perception. Tell yourself, this will only take 2 minutes, because often that's all it takes to begin. And once you begin, time expands naturally. The task feels less intimidating, and progress happens. Let's also talk about energy. Some habits feel hard not because they are difficult, but because you're trying to do them at the wrong time. Your energy is not constant throughout the day. There are moments when you feel sharp, focused, and capable. And there are moments when you feel tired, distracted, and slow. If you try to do demanding tasks when your energy is low, It creates unnecessary friction. So align your habits with your energy. Do important work when you're most alert. Do simpler tasks when your energy drops. This reduces resistance because you're working with your natural rhythm, not against it. Now consider this. Sometimes friction is not physical, it's emotional. Doubt, fear, overthinking. These create invisible resistance. They make simple actions feel heavy. So instead of trying to eliminate those feelings, lower the emotional cost of action. Give yourself permission to do things imperfectly. Remove the pressure to perform. Focus on completion, not quality. Because when the stakes feel lower, the action feels easier. And when the action feels easier, you're more likely to take it. Here's another powerful idea. Use momentum to your advantage. Once you complete one small action, it becomes easier to do the next. So chain your actions together. Start with something simple, then build on it. One step leads to another. And before you know it, you've created flow. That's how effortless behavior is built, not by forcing big actions, but by connecting small ones. Now let's flip the perspective. Just as you reduce friction for good habits, you can increase friction for bad ones. Make them harder to access, slower to begin, less convenient. If something requires more effort, you're less likely to do it. Even small barriers can make a big difference. Because again, your brain prefers ease. So shape that ease in your favor. Here's the deeper truth behind all of this. You don't need more motivation. You need better design. Because motivation fades. Willpower fluctuates. But environment and structure remain. When your system is built correctly, action becomes automatic. Not because you're forcing it, but because it's easier than not doing it. And that's the goal. To make success feel natural. To make progress feel smooth. To remove the struggle from the process. Because when something feels effortless, you don't resist it. You repeat it. And what you repeat shapes your life. So stop asking, how can I push harder? Start asking, how can I make this easier? How can I reduce the steps? How can I remove the barriers? How can I simplify the process? Because the less friction you have, the more action you take. And the more action you take, the closer you move toward the life you want. Effortless doesn't mean easy results. It means easy beginnings. And easy beginnings, repeated daily, lead to powerful outcomes. Chapter 10, The Discipline Equation, Doing It Even When You Don't Feel Like It. There will be days when you don't feel like showing up. Days when your energy is low. When your mood is off. When your mind starts offering excuses that sound completely reasonable. Not today. I'll start tomorrow. I just need a break. And in those moments, motivation is nowhere to be found. This is where most people stop. Not because they don't care. Not because they're incapable. But because they've been taught to rely on how they feel. Here's the truth. If you only act when you feel like it, you will only get results when your feelings cooperate. And feelings are inconsistent. They change with your sleep, your stress, your environment, your circumstances. They rise and fall without warning. So if your actions depend on your feelings, your progress will always be unstable. This is where discipline comes in. Discipline is not about being extreme. It's not about forcing yourself through pain or pushing beyond your limits every day. Discipline is about one simple decision. Doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like doing it. That's it. It's quiet. It's steady. And it's incredibly powerful. Because it separates intention from action. Anyone can have good intentions. Anyone can plan. Anyone can set goals. Anyone can say, I want to improve. But discipline is what turns those intentions into reality. It's the bridge between knowing and doing. Now here's something important. Discipline is not something you're born with. It's something you build. And like any skill, it gets stronger with use. Every time you follow through, especially when it's difficult, you reinforce it. You teach yourself that your actions are not controlled by your emotions. You prove that you can move forward, even when it's uncomfortable. And that builds power. Because the more you practice discipline, the less you rely on motivation. You stop asking, do I feel like it? And you start saying, This is what I do. That shift changes everything. Now let's break down what makes discipline work. First, clarity. You need to know exactly what you're supposed to do. Vague intentions don't create disciplined action. I should be more productive is not clear. I should work on my goals is not specific. Discipline needs direction. What are you doing? When are you doing it? How are you starting? The clearer the action, the easier it is to follow through. Because confusion creates hesitation, and hesitation leads to inaction. Second, commitment. Discipline requires a decision made in advance, not in the moment, because in the moment, your feelings will try to take control. So decide ahead of time. This is what I will do. This is when I will do it. And treat that decision as non-negotiable. Not based on mood. Not based on comfort. Not based on convenience. Based on commitment. Because when you remove negotiation, you remove excuses. Third, action before emotion. Most people wait to feel ready. Disciplined people act first. And here's what they understand. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. When you start, even in a small way, your brain begins to engage. Energy increases. Focus sharpens. Resistance decreases. But you have to move first. You have to begin before you feel ready. That's the discipline equation. Action, momentum, motivation. Not motivation first. Action first. Now let's talk about resistance. That feeling of, I don't want to do this. It's normal. It shows up whenever you're about to do something that requires effort, focus, or discomfort. The mistake is thinking that resistance means you should stop. It doesn't. It's just a signal that you're stepping outside your comfort zone. And growth lives there. So instead of avoiding resistance, expect it. Prepare for it. When it shows up, don't argue with it. Don't try to eliminate it. Just act anyway. Because discipline is not about feeling good before you act. It's about acting regardless of how you feel. Here's another key idea. Make discipline easier by reducing the size of the task. You don't need to conquer everything. You just need to begin. Tell yourself, I'll do 5 minutes. I'll take one step. I'll start small. Because discipline is not measured by how much you do in one moment. It's measured by your ability to start, even when you don't want to. And once you start, you often continue. But even if you don't, you've still strengthened discipline. You've still shown yourself that you can follow through. Now let's address something deeper. Self-respect. Discipline is a form of self-respect. It's you saying, my goals matter enough for me to act, even when it's hard. Every time you follow through, you build that respect. And every time you avoid action, you weaken it. Not because you failed, but because you sent yourself a message. I only act when it's easy. Over time, those messages shape how you see yourself. So discipline is not just about results. It's about identity. It's about becoming someone who keeps their word. Someone who shows up. Someone who follows through. Someone who does what they said they would do. And that identity builds confidence. Real confidence, not based on success, but based on trust. Trust that you can rely on yourself. Now here's the final piece. Forgiveness without quitting. There will be days when you don't follow through. Days when you choose comfort. Days when discipline slips. That doesn't mean you've lost it. It means you're human. The key is not to turn one moment into a pattern. Don't let one missed action become a reason to stop. Reset quickly. Return immediately. Because discipline is not about being perfect. It's about being persistent. It's about showing up more often than you don't. So when you don't feel like it, remember this. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need to feel motivated. You just need to act. One step, one action, one decision. Because those moments, the ones where you don't feel like it, are the ones that matter most. They are the moments that build discipline. They are the moments that separate intention from reality. They are the moments that shape who you become. So don't wait for the right feeling. Become the kind of person who acts anyway. Because when you do, you take control of your life in the most powerful way possible. Chapter 11, Tracking Progress. measuring what truly matters. What gets measured gets improved. But here's the deeper truth most people miss. What you choose to measure shapes what you become. Every day, whether you realize it or not, you are tracking something. You track your time. You track your money. You track your likes, views, and reactions. You track what others think about you. But very few people track the one thing that actually determines their future: their progress. Not just results, but the actions and behaviors that lead to those results. And that's where everything begins to change. Because when you start measuring what truly matters, you bring awareness to your life. And awareness creates control. Without tracking, everything feels unclear. You think you're doing enough, but you're not sure. You feel like you're improving, but you can't prove it. You assume progress, but you don't see it. And that uncertainty leads to frustration. It makes you question yourself. It makes you lose focus. It makes you quit too early. But when you track your progress, you replace guessing with clarity. You see what's working. You see what's not. You see where you're improving and where you need to adjust. That's power. Now here's the key shift. Stop tracking only outcomes. Start tracking inputs. Outcomes are the results you want. Weight lost, money earned, goals achieved. But outcomes are delayed. They don't show up immediately. And if you only measure outcomes, you'll often feel like you're not making progress, especially in the beginning. That's discouraging. That's why most people lose momentum. Instead, track the actions you can control. Did you show up today? Did you complete the task? Did you follow through? These are inputs. They happen in real time. They give you immediate feedback. And most importantly, they are within your control. Because you can't always control results, but you can always control effort. Let's say your goal is to get stronger. Instead of focusing only on the number on the scale or the mirror, track your workouts. Did you complete your session? Did you move your body? Did you stay consistent? Those are wins. And when you stack enough of those wins, the results take care of themselves. Now let's talk about visibility. Tracking works best when it's visible, not hidden, not complicated, not buried in an app you never open. Make your progress easy to see. Use a simple checklist, a calendar, a notebook. Mark each day you follow through. Create a visual record of your effort. Because when you see your progress, it reinforces your behavior. It reminds you, I'm moving forward, and that feeling builds momentum. There's something powerful about seeing a chain of completed days. It creates a desire to continue. You don't want to break the streak. Not out of pressure, but out of pride. Because you've built something. And you want to protect it. Now here's an important principle. Track consistently, but don't obsess. Tracking is meant to guide you, not control you. If you become too focused on numbers, you can lose sight of the bigger picture. You can turn progress into pressure. You can make small setbacks feel bigger than they are. So use tracking as a tool, not a judgment. It's not there to tell you if you're good or bad. It's there to give you information. Neutral, clear, honest. Because the goal is not perfection. It's awareness. Now let's talk about reflection. Tracking is not just about recording. It's about learning. At the end of each week, take a moment to review. What did you do well? Where did you struggle? What patterns are you noticing? Because patterns reveal truth. You might notice that you're more consistent on certain days, more focused at certain times, more productive in certain environments. This insight is valuable because once you understand your patterns, you can adjust your approach. You can refine your system. You can improve your process. And that's how progress accelerates. Not just by doing more, but by doing better. Here's another powerful idea. Celebrate small wins. Tracking is not just about accountability, it's about recognition. When you complete a task, acknowledge it. When you stay consistent, appreciate it. Because your brain needs positive reinforcement. If all you focus on is what's missing, you'll lose motivation. But if you recognize what you've done, you build confidence. You build belief. And belief fuels action. Now let's go deeper. Tracking progress is not just about what you do. It's about who you're becoming. Every check mark, every completed day, every repeated action. It's evidence. Evidence that you are changing, that you are improving, that you are becoming more consistent, more focused, more committed. And over time, that evidence reshapes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries. You start seeing yourself as someone who follows through. That shift is powerful. Because once you believe that about yourself, your actions align naturally. Now here's the final piece. Track less, but track better. You don't need to measure everything. You just need to measure what matters. Choose a few key actions that move your life forward. Keep it simple. Keep it focused. Because too much tracking creates overwhelm. And overwhelm leads to inaction. So simplify. Be intentional. Measure what truly matters. And ignore the rest. Because at the end of the day, progress is not about doing everything. It's about doing the right things consistently. And tracking helps you stay aligned with that. So start today. Pick one area, one habit, one action. Track it. Not perfectly, but consistently. Watch it. Learn from it. Build on it. Because when you can see your progress, you can believe in it. And when you believe in it, you keep going. And when you keep going, that's when real change happens. Chapter 12. Overcoming plateaus. Staying committed when growth feels slow. At some point in your journey, everything will slow down. The excitement fades. The visible progress disappears. The results that once came quickly stop coming at all. You're still putting in the effort. You're still showing up. But it feels like nothing is changing. This is the plateau. And this is where most people quit. Not because they lack ability. Not because their strategy is wrong. But because they misinterpret what's happening. They think, I've stopped improving. This isn't working anymore. Maybe I've reached my limit. But the truth is far more powerful. Plateaus are not the end of growth. They are a necessary phase of it. Growth is not a straight line. It doesn't move upward at a steady, predictable pace. It moves in layers. You improve, then stabilize. You grow, then consolidate. You expand, then refine. And during that stabilization phase, it feels like nothing is happening. But something is happening. You're strengthening what you've built. You're turning new skills into reliable habits. You're turning effort into efficiency. You're turning learning into mastery. This is not visible growth. It's structural growth. And it's essential. Because without it, progress will be fragile, temporary, unstable. Think of it like building a foundation. You don't see it from the outside. But without it, nothing above it can last. The plateau is where your foundation is being reinforced. Now here's the challenge. Because growth is not visible during this phase, your motivation drops. Your brain craves progress. It wants proof that your effort is working. And when that proof disappears, doubt begins to take its place. You start questioning everything. Your routine, your strategy, your ability. And that's when you're most likely to stop. But here's the reality. The plateau is not telling you to quit. It's testing whether you will continue. Because the next level of growth is often hidden behind this phase. Most people never reach it, not because it doesn't exist, but because they leave too early. So the key is not to avoid plateaus. It's to understand them. And more importantly, to stay committed through them. Let's start with a simple shift. Stop expecting constant progress. Start expecting phases. There will be times when you improve quickly. And there will be times when things feel still. Both are normal. Both are necessary. When you accept that, you remove the emotional reaction. You stop seeing the plateau as failure and start seeing it as part of the process. Now let's talk about adjustment. Staying committed doesn't mean staying stagnant. It means staying engaged. During a plateau, it's important to evaluate, not abandon. Ask yourself, am I still challenging myself? Am I repeating the same actions without growth? Am I pushing slightly beyond my comfort zone? Because sometimes a plateau is not just a phase, it's a signal that you've adapted to your current level. And now you need to raise the standard. Small adjustments can restart progress. Change the intensity. Change the approach. Change the environment. Not drastically, but intentionally. Because growth resumes when challenge returns. Here's another powerful strategy. Shift your focus from results to refinement. Instead of asking, why am I not improving? Ask, how can I do this better? Better form, better focus, better execution. Because even when results are flat, quality can improve. And quality leads to the next breakthrough. This keeps you moving forward, mentally and physically. Now let's address patience. Plateaus demand patience, but not passive patience. Active patience. The kind where you continue to show up, continue to refine, continue to believe without immediate reward. This is difficult because we live in a world that rewards speed, fast results, quick wins, instant feedback. But real growth doesn't always follow that timeline. Sometimes it asks you to trust what you cannot yet see. And that trust is what separates those who continue from those who stop. Now here's something important. Plateaus reveal your mindset. When progress is fast, it's easy to stay motivated. But when progress slows, your true mindset shows. Do you stay committed or do you walk away? Do you trust the process or do you doubt it? Do you continue or do you restart something new? Because starting over feels easier than staying stuck. But starting over resets your progress. It puts you back at the beginning. While staying through the plateau moves you forward, even if it doesn't feel like it. So the goal is not to escape the plateau. It's to outlast it. Because on the other side, something shifts. Your effort catches up. Your skills align. Your results break through. And it feels sudden. Like everything changed at once. But it didn't. It was building the entire time. Now let's talk about perspective. Zoom out. Look at your journey over months, not days. Because plateaus feel longer when you measure them too closely. But when you step back, you often realize you are further than you think, stronger than you were, more consistent than before, more capable than you realize. Progress is still there. You just need the right lens to see it. Finally, remember this. The plateau is not where you lose progress. It's where you prove commitment. It's where discipline deepens, where patience grows, where identity strengthens. It's where you decide, am I someone who continues or someone who quits when it gets slow? Because that decision defines your future more than any result. So when growth feels slow, don't panic. Don't quit. Don't restart. Stay. Refine. Continue. Because the plateau is not blocking your progress. It's preparing you for your next level. And if you can stay through it, you won't just grow. You'll transform. Chapter 13, The Domino Effect. How one habit transforms your entire life. You don't need to change everything to change your life. You need to change one thing that changes everything else. This is the power of the domino effect. Imagine a row of dominoes lined up in a sequence. You don't knock down all of them at once. You push the first one, and it hits the next, and the next, and the next. One small movement creates a chain reaction. That's exactly how transformation works. Not through massive, overwhelming effort, but through one strategic habit that triggers others. Most people try to improve their lives by doing too much at once. They set multiple goals. They try to fix everything. They overload themselves with changes. And within days, they feel exhausted. Not because they're incapable, but because they're scattered. Their energy is divided. Their focus is diluted. Their progress is inconsistent. So they stop. But real change doesn't require doing more. It requires doing what matters most. And that starts with identifying your lead domino. Your lead domino is the one habit that, when done consistently, naturally improves other areas of your life. It's not always obvious. It's not always the biggest habit. But it's the one that creates the most impact. For some people, it's waking up early. For others, it's daily movement. For some, it's focused work. For others, it's planning their day. The habit itself doesn't matter as much as what it leads to. Because the right habit doesn't exist in isolation. It creates a ripple. Let's take an example. When you start your day with a clear plan, something shifts. You know what needs to be done. You waste less time deciding. You stay focused longer. That leads to better work, better time management, less stress, and that leads to more confidence, more control, more momentum. One habit, multiple outcomes. That's the domino effect. Now here's the key. Your goal is not to find a perfect habit. Your goal is to find a powerful one. A habit that influences your behavior beyond the moment it's completed. Because some habits are isolated, they start and end with themselves. But others expand. They spill into your day. They shape your decisions. They influence your mindset. Those are the ones you want. Now let's talk about momentum. When you complete one positive action, your brain shifts. You feel a sense of progress. And that feeling makes it easier to take the next step. You become more likely to continue. This is called behavioral momentum. And it's one of the most powerful forces in personal growth. Because once you're in motion, staying in motion becomes easier. But getting into motion, that's the challenge. That's why the first domino matters so much. It doesn't need to be big. It needs to be reliable. Something you can do every day. Something that doesn't depend on mood. Something that starts your momentum. Because once that first action is complete, everything else feels more possible. Now here's something important. The domino effect works both ways. Positive habits create positive chains, but negative habits create negative ones. One poor choice can lead to another. One distraction can lead to more. One delay can turn into a pattern. So awareness matters. Because every action is not just an action, it's a starting point. It's the beginning of a sequence. And that sequence shapes your day. That's why the first decision matters so much. Because it sets the direction. Now let's go deeper. Your lead domino is often tied to your identity. It's the habit that reinforces who you want to become. If you want to be focused, your lead domino might be starting your day without distractions. If you want to be healthy, it might be daily movement. If you want to be productive, it might be beginning your most important task early. Because that habit becomes a signal. A signal that says, this is who I am. And once that identity is activated, your behavior aligns with it. You don't need to force the rest. It follows naturally. Now here's the mistake most people make. They underestimate the power of one habit. They think, this is too small to matter. But they're looking at the action, not the chain reaction. They're judging the domino, not the sequence it creates. And that's why they overlook it. But small actions, when connected to the right system, create massive impact. Not instantly, but consistently. Now let's talk about focus. When you choose one habit to prioritize, you simplify your energy. You remove overwhelm. You reduce distraction. You create clarity. Instead of trying to improve everything, you concentrate on one area. And that concentration creates depth. It allows you to build consistency. And consistency creates strength. Once that habit becomes stable, you don't need to think about it. It becomes automatic. And that frees up your energy to add another domino. That's how real growth happens. Not by stacking everything at once, but by building one layer at a time. Now imagine this over time. One habit leads to another. One improvement leads to the next. One change creates momentum for more. And before you realize it, your life looks different. Not because you changed everything at once, but because one thing kept leading to another. That's transformation. Gradual. Connected. Powerful. Finally, understand this. You don't need a breakthrough. You need a starting point. One action. One habit. One decision. That you commit to daily. Protect it. Repeat it. Strengthen it. Because that one habit is not just a habit. It's a trigger. A catalyst. A domino that starts a chain reaction your future depends on. So don't wait to change everything. Find your first domino and push it. Because once it falls, everything else begins to move. Chapter 14, Mindset Mastery, Rewiring Thoughts for Long-Term Success. Everything you do begins with a thought. Before you take action, you think. Before you decide, you interpret. Before you move forward, you tell yourself a story. And that story shapes everything. Not your circumstances, not your past, not even your abilities, your thoughts. Because the way you think determines the way you act. And the way you act determines the life you live. This is why mindset is not just important, it's foundational. If your thoughts are working against you, your actions will always feel harder than they need to be. But if your thoughts are working for you, everything becomes more aligned, more focused, more powerful. So the question is not, am I thinking? You are. The question is, are my thoughts helping me or holding me back? Let's start with awareness. Most people don't question their thoughts. They assume them. A thought appears and they believe it. I'm not good enough. This is too hard. I always mess this up. It's not the right time. These thoughts feel real. But they are not facts. They are interpretations. And interpretations can be changed. But only if you notice them. So the first step to mastering your mindset is simple. Observe your thinking. Pay attention to the patterns. What do you say to yourself when something goes wrong? How do you respond when things get difficult? What assumptions are you making about your ability? Because your repeated thoughts become your default mindset. And your default mindset becomes your reality. Now here's the powerful shift. You don't have to believe every thought you have. You can challenge them. You can question them. You can replace them. Let's say a thought appears, I can't do this. Instead of accepting it, ask, is that true? Or is that just what I'm used to thinking? That pause creates space. And in that space, you have a choice. You can keep the thought, or you can change it. Not into something unrealistic, but into something constructive. I'm still learning. I can improve. I haven't figured it out yet. These are not empty affirmations. They are functional thoughts. Thoughts that allow action instead of blocking it. Because the goal is not to feel good. The goal is to think in a way that moves you forward. Now let's talk about mental patterns. Your brain is efficient. It repeats what it knows. So if you've spent years thinking a certain way, those thoughts will appear automatically. That's normal. But automatic doesn't mean permanent. Every time you interrupt a negative thought and replace it with a better one, you create a new pathway. At first, it feels forced, unnatural. But over time, it becomes easier, more automatic, more real. That's how rewiring works. Not instantly, but gradually, through repetition. Now here's something important. Your mindset is not built in moments of success. It's built in moments of challenge. When things are going well, it's easy to think positively. But when things go wrong, that's when your mindset shows. Do you shut down? Do you blame? Do you avoid? Or do you adapt? Do you learn? Do you continue? Because your response to difficulty defines your growth. So instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask, what is this teaching me? That shift changes everything. It turns obstacles into opportunities. It turns frustration into feedback. It turns setbacks into stepping stones. Now let's go deeper. Your thoughts don't just affect your actions. They affect your identity. If you constantly tell yourself, I'm not consistent, you'll act in ways that confirm that belief. If you think, I'm not capable, you'll hesitate, avoid, and limit yourself. But if you begin to think, I'm improving, I'm learning, I'm becoming stronger, your behavior starts to align with that. Because your mind wants consistency. It wants your actions to match your beliefs. So change the belief, and the behavior follows. Now here's a powerful tool. Language. The words you use, especially when talking to yourself, matter more than you think. Instead of saying, I have to do this, say, I choose to do this. Instead of, I'm bad at this, say, I'm getting better at this. Instead of, this is impossible, say, this is challenging, but I'll find a way. These small changes shift your perspective. They move you from resistance to ownership, from limitation to possibility. And over time, they reshape how you see yourself. Now let's talk about focus. Your mind is always looking for evidence. Evidence to support what you already believe. If you believe things are going wrong, your mind will find proof. If you believe you're not improving, your mind will highlight your mistakes. But you can direct that focus. You can choose what to look for. Look for progress. Look for effort. Look for small improvements. Because what you focus on expands, and what expands becomes your reality. Now here's the truth. Mindset mastery is not about eliminating negative thoughts. It's about managing them. You will still have doubts. You will still feel fear. You will still experience uncertainty. That's part of being human. But you don't have to let those thoughts control you. You can acknowledge them and still act. You can feel doubt and still move forward. Because your thoughts don't have to dictate your behavior. You do. Finally, understand this. Your mind is like a system. What you feed it, it produces more of. If you constantly expose yourself to negativity, distraction, and limitation, that becomes your default. But if you feed it growth, learning, and possibility, it begins to reflect that. So be intentional with what you read, with what you watch, with what you listen to, because your environment shapes your thoughts, and your thoughts shape your life. So here's your challenge. Start listening to your inner voice, not to judge it, but to understand it, and then begin to guide it. Gently, consistently, intentionally. Because when you master your mindset, you don't just change how you think. You change how you live. And that's where long-term success begins. Chapter 15. Living the 1% Life. Sustaining growth for a lifetime. Reaching success is one thing. Keeping it, living it, becoming it, that's something entirely different. Most people focus on how to start, how to improve, how to build habits, how to change their life. But very few people focus on what comes next, how to sustain it. Because real success is not a moment. It's a lifestyle. It's not something you achieve once and hold on to forever. It's something you practice, daily, quietly, consistently. That's what it means to live the 1% life. Not chasing constant change, not pushing for endless improvement, but maintaining a steady rhythm of growth that lasts for years, even decades. Let's begin with a simple truth. What you build, you must maintain. Every habit, every routine, every system. If you stop supporting it, it slowly fades. Not all at once, but gradually. That's how most people lose progress. Not through failure, but through neglect. They reach a certain level and then relax. They stop doing the small things that got them there. They assume the result will stay, even when the actions disappear. But results don't stay. They respond. They follow what you repeat. So the key to long-term success is not intensity, it's sustainability. You don't need to do more. You need to continue. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Living the 1% life is not about constant pressure. It's about balance. Because if growth feels exhausting, you won't maintain it. If your routines feel overwhelming, you'll eventually walk away. So the goal is to build a lifestyle that supports growth without draining you. Something you can repeat not just for weeks, but for years. This means simplifying. Not adding more habits, but keeping the ones that matter most. Not doing everything, but doing what works. Because long-term success is built on what you can sustain, not what you can start. Now let's talk about identity at this stage. Earlier, you began shaping who you are through your actions. Now, that identity becomes your anchor. You're no longer trying to become someone new. You are that person. And your role shifts from building to protecting. Protecting your standards. Protecting your routines. Protecting your direction. Because life will test you. There will be distractions, unexpected challenges, changes in routine. And in those moments, your identity becomes your guide. It reminds you, this is how I live. This is what I do. Not perfectly, but consistently. Now here's something powerful. The 1% life is flexible. It adapts. It evolves. Because your life will change. Your goals will shift. Your responsibilities will grow. Your priorities will adjust. So your systems must evolve with you. What worked before may need to be adjusted. Not abandoned, but refined. This is how you stay aligned. Not rigid, but responsive. Because long-term growth is not about staying the same. It's about staying committed while adjusting the approach. Now let's talk about seasons. Your life will move through different seasons. Some fast-paced, some slow, some focused on growth, others focused on stability. And that's okay. Not every season is about pushing forward. Some are about maintaining. Some are about recovering. Some are about reflecting. The key is not to break your rhythm completely. Even in slower seasons, keep something alive. A small habit, a simple routine, a minimal action. Because consistency, even at a lower level, keeps the identity intact. It keeps the system running. And when you're ready to push again, you don't start from zero. You continue from where you are. Now let's talk about boredom. Yes, boredom. Because eventually, growth becomes routine. The excitement fades. The actions feel normal, predictable, even repetitive. And this is where many people lose interest. They think, this isn't exciting anymore. So they stop. But here's the truth. Boredom is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is working. Because mastery is not exciting. It's consistent. It's stable. It's repeatable. And those who succeed long-term are not the ones who chase excitement. They are the ones who stay committed when things feel ordinary. Now here's another shift. Living the 1% life means redefining success. It's not just about big wins. It's about daily alignment. Did you stay consistent? Did you act with intention? Did you move forward even slightly? That's success. Because when you focus only on big results, you disconnect from the process. But when you value daily actions, you stay engaged. And engagement is what sustains growth. Now let's talk about reflection. Long-term growth requires awareness. Take time to pause. Look at your journey. What's working? What's not? What needs to change? Because staying consistent doesn't mean staying blind. It means staying aware and making small adjustments over time. That's how you avoid stagnation. That's how you keep improving without losing balance. Finally, understand this. The 1% life is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming consistent over a lifetime. It's about waking up each day with a simple mindset. I will move forward just a little, not in a rush, not under pressure, but with intention. Because over time, those small movements create something powerful. A life that is stable, a mindset that is strong, a system that supports you. You don't need to start over again and again. You don't need to chase change constantly. You simply continue. That's the difference. So don't just build success. Live it, protect it, sustain it, evolve with it. Because the real goal is not to improve your life once. It's to create a life that keeps improving, 1% at a time, for as long as you live. Conclusion. Success is not a mystery, it's a process. By now, you understand that massive change doesn't require massive action. It requires consistent, intentional, and focused improvement. The 1% rule is not just a strategy, it's a way of living. It shifts your focus from short-term results to long-term transformation. There will be days when progress feels invisible, days when motivation fades. But remember, every small step counts. Every action builds momentum. Every effort compounds. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to keep going. Start small. Stay consistent. Trust the process. Because one day you'll look back and realize that those tiny daily changes didn't just improve your life, they completely transformed it.